My name is Evan. 3 months ago, I took a job as the night guard at an old abandoned hospital, Ravenwood Memorial. The building stood defiantly at the edge of town, surrounded by pine woods that seemed to silently judge anyone who dared approach. I was desperate back then. Bills were piling up and job opportunities were scarce. The offer to become a night guard with an unusually high paycheck felt like a stroke of luck until I read the contract. Follow these 6 rules. Breaking them carries great risk. I looked at the head of security, an old man named Mr. Hargrove. His face was lined with deep wrinkles, and his eyes, they seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. He handed me a worn piece of paper. 1. Do not enter the main operating room after 1 a.m. 2. If you hear crying from the 3rd floor, ignore it. 3. At exactly 3 a.m., ensure all doors to the morgue are locked. 4. Do not speak to anyone you cannot see. 5. If the hallway lights flicker twice, shelter in the security office and lock the door. 6. Never under any circumstance remove any item from the hospital. I almost declined the job right then and there, but the salary figure written at the bottom pulled me back to reality. It's just a formality, I told myself. Old rules made to keep the building safe. My first night arrived. The cold air cut through me as I entered the dusty security office. The monitors showed long, dark, empty hallways. A strange metallic tapping echoed faintly from the speakers. At 5 past midnight, I began my patrol. The old fluorescent lights buzzed quietly, and the scent of antiseptic mixed with dust filled the air. My footsteps echoed as I passed the main operating room. Without thinking, I glanced at the glass window on the door. Darkness. But then, something moved inside. A human-shaped shadow standing still. I gripped my flashlight tightly. Relax, Evan. It's probably a rat or shadows from the equipment. But as I walked away, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, slow, following. My first night had just begun, and I was already questioning whether the paycheck was worth it. The footsteps echoed behind me, steady and deliberate. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. The beam landed on the cracked tiles of the hallway floor. Nothing. Just empty space, stretching into shadow. Maybe it's just the building settling, I thought, trying to calm my racing heart. But deep down, I knew better. Rule 4 kept replaying in my mind. Do not speak to anyone you cannot see. I continued walking, forcing myself to keep my breathing steady. My patrol route took me past the old pediatric ward, now filled with broken cribs and faded murals of smiling animals that looked more disturbing than cheerful in the dim light. Suddenly, the lights above me flickered once, and then twice. My stomach dropped. Rule 5. If the hallway lights flicker twice, shelter in the security office and lock the door. I turned and bolted, the sounds of my footsteps merging with what I swore were other steps, closer, heavier. The security office door felt miles away, but I reached it and slammed it shut behind me. Lock, deadbolt, chain. I sank into the chair, chest heaving. On the monitor feeds, the hallway seemed still again, silent. But then, the camera for the 3rd floor, the floor I was told to ignore, came to life. The feed was shaky, grainy. In the frame, a small figure stood at the end of the hallway. A girl, no more than 8 years old, dressed in a hospital gown stained with something dark. She wasn't moving, just standing, head tilted slightly to one side, facing the camera. Then over the speakers, a sound broke the silence. Crying. Soft at first, then rising, desperate. Rule 2. If you hear crying from the third floor, ignore it. But it wasn't just coming from the monitor anymore. It was outside my office door. I gripped the flashlight tighter, my knuckles white. Don't open it, don't speak, don't break the rules. The crying continued for what felt like hours, though my watch told me it was only minutes. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sound stopped. I didn't move, I didn't even breathe until the first faint light of dawn seeped through the blinds. My first night was over. But something told me the worst was yet to come. When morning arrived, the weight on my chest lifted, but only slightly. I went home, slept poorly, and returned the next night, convincing myself it had been my imagination. Old buildings groan, old security systems glitch, that's all. But deep down, I knew the truth. At midnight sharp, I resumed my patrol. The hospital greeted me with cold silence and the occasional creak of its aging bones. The cameras were working fine, and no signs of movement stirred in the halls. I avoided the main operating room like the plague. Rule 1 was clear: stay out after 1 a.m. At 2:55 a.m., my watch vibrated softly. It was almost time for Rule 3. At exactly 3 a.m., ensure all doors to the morgue are locked. I grabbed the key ring from my belt and headed toward the low level, where the morgue sat buried beneath layers of old concrete. The staircase groaned under my weight. As I reached the basement, the air grew colder. Not the usual cool of underground spaces. This was unnatural, like the air itself recoiled from human presence. The hallway stretched out in front of me. Faded signs still pointed to the morgue. The double doors loomed ahead. I reached them and checked the lock. Secure. But as the second hand of my watch ticked toward 3 o'clock, something shifted. A cold draft swept past my legs. I looked down. The morgue doors were trembling. No, something behind them was pushing against them, testing them. Thud. Thud. The force wasn't frantic. It was measured, patient. I pressed my hand against the cold metal. Not tonight, I whispered, locking the final bolt just as the watch ticked past 3 o'clock. Silence. For a moment, I thought I had imagined the whole thing. Then, from behind the door, a low, rasping voice whispered a single word. Open. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the keys. Rule 6 flashed through my mind. Never, under any circumstance, remove any item from the hospital. I wondered in that chilling moment if the voice wasn't asking me to open the door. Maybe it was asking to be let out. I didn't answer. I didn't run. I walked carefully back to the security office and locked myself inside until dawn. That was my second night. And the hospital was only beginning to reveal itself. By the third night, exhaustion gnawed at me. Sleep had become a fragile, shallow thing. Every creak, every rustle at home sounded like footsteps in the hospital. But I forced myself to return. The paycheck was good. Too good to walk away. At midnight, I did my rounds. The halls felt colder than before, the shadows heavier. I passed the main operating room without looking inside. By now, I knew better. At 12:30 a.m., I sat in the security office reviewing the camera feeds. Everything appeared still. But then, faint at first, I heard a sound, a whisper. I turned down the volume, thinking it might be interference. But the whispering grew clearer. Evan. I froze. No one should know my name. No one but Mr. Hargrove, and he was never here at night. Evan? Help. The voice came from the walls, or maybe from the vents. It was impossible to tell. I checked the feeds again. The third-floor camera showed the empty hallway. No sign of the girl from the night before. Help me. Rule 4 burned in my mind. Do not speak to anyone you cannot see. My throat tightened. The rational part of me screamed that this was a trick. Audio glitches. Imagination. Something explainable. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then the lights in the office flickered. Once, twice. My pulse spiked. Rule 5. I locked the door and held my breath. The whispering stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then scraping. Something sharp dragged along the outside of the security office door. Slow, deliberate. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it at the door. Nothing moved in the gap beneath it. The scraping stopped. Moments later, the light steadied. The camera feeds returned to static calm. But as I lowered the flashlight, I noticed something new scratched into the metal of the door itself. Let me in. When daylight came, I reported the scratches to Mr. Hargrove. He didn't even blink. Instead, he handed me a thermos of black coffee and said, "You followed the rules. That's all that matters." His calm unnerved me. It was as if he expected things like this to happen. That night, I returned with a growing sense of dread. At midnight, my patrol began as usual. The hospital greeted me with that familiar, suffocating silence. Everything was fine. Until it wasn't. At exactly 12:45 a.m., the camera feed for the main operating room glitched. The screen went black. Then it returned, showing something impossible. The door was ajar. I froze. I locked that door. I know I did. For a long minute, I stared at the screen, debating whether to break Rule 1. Do not enter the main operating room after 1 a.m. It wasn't 1 a.m. yet. Technically, I could go in. Gripping my flashlight, I approached the operating room. The door creaked open further as I neared. The smell hit me first, sterile antiseptic mixed with something metallic. Blood. Inside, the surgical lights flickered weakly. Rusted equipment stood like frozen sentinels. An operating table sat in the center, straps dangling from its sides. And there, standing by the table, was a figure. A surgeon's gown, a face mask, but no face behind the mask. Just darkness. The figure didn't move, didn't breathe. I stepped back, heart pounding. My flashlight trembled in my hand. Then the figure raised a hand and pointed at the table. "Lie down." The voice was cold, inhuman. "Rule 4. Don't speak to anyone you can't see, Aum." But I could see him or it. Did the rules still apply? My instincts screamed at me to run. Instead, I backed out of the room, never breaking eye contact. The moment I crossed the threshold, the lights inside died. The figure vanished into darkness. The door slammed shut behind me. My watch beeped. 1 a.m. After the operating room incident, I seriously considered quitting. But fear of losing the income and a strange, growing curiosity kept me returning. Night 6 began like the others. Silent corridors, flickering lights. The air seemed heavier than before, pressing against my chest with every breath. At 12:20 a.m., the crying returned. It started soft like before, coming from the 3rd floor. Rule 2. If you hear crying from the 3rd floor, ignore it. But this time, the sound was different. Less like sorrow. More like pleading. "Help me." My pulse quickened. Every instinct told me to stay put, to follow the rules. Yet some part of me, perhaps foolish, perhaps brave, wanted answers. I opened the security office door and stepped into the hallway. The crying grew louder as I climbed the stairs. The metal handrail felt ice cold beneath my fingers. The 3rd floor was darker than the rest of the hospital. The overhead lights were dead. Only my flashlight cut through the gloom. At the end of the hallway, near room 317, the girl stood. The same girl from the camera feed. Hospital gown, bare feet, head tilted to one side. "Please," she whispered, "don't let him take me." Her voice was thin, fragile. I froze, torn between the rules and the undeniable humanity in her eyes. "Don't speak, don't speak." But before I could retreat, something moved in the shadows behind her. A tall, thin figure, barely more than a silhouette, watching us both. His face was covered by a surgical mask, the same figure from the operating room. He raised a finger to his lips. Silence. The girl's eyes widened in terror. I stepped back. The lights flickered twice. "Rule 5. Get to the security office. Lock the door." I ran. The girl didn't follow. She simply faded into the darkness. As the security office door slammed shut behind me, I glanced at the monitors. Room 317's camera was dead. But on the door's metal surface, scratched deep into the frame, new words had appeared. "He's coming." The 7th night, I arrived at Ravenwood earlier than usual. The scratches on the security office door haunted my thoughts all day. He's coming. But who? The faceless surgeon? The tall shadow? Before my shift started, I called Mr. Hargrove. "I need answers," I demanded. "Who's the girl? And who is the man following her?" For the first time, his calm cracked. His voice lowered. "I told you the rules for a reason, Evan. Don't engage, don't investigate." "I broke the rules," I admitted. "I spoke to the girl." Silence. Then a sigh. "That's why he's coming." My skin went cold. "Who is he?" "Dr. Solomon Crane," Hargrove whispered. "The chief surgeon here decades ago. He performed illegal experiments in the main operating room. When the authorities closed Ravenwood, he refused to leave. Some say his methods never stopped." I gripped the phone tighter. "The girl?" "One of his last patients. They never found her body." I swallowed hard. "What happens if I keep following the rules?" "You might survive. But if you keep breaking them, he'll take you, just like the others." Before I could ask more, the line went dead. Click. The hospital's darkness seemed heavier that night. Every corner felt alive with watching eyes. At 12:05 a.m., as I began my rounds, something new happened. A low buzzing sounded from my radio, static at first, then layered beneath the noise. "Evan, please, help." The girl's voice. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. At 1 a.m., the main operating room door stood wide open. Inside, the surgeon waited. And this time, the table wasn't empty. A figure lay strapped down, small, fragile. The girl, she turned her head, eyes wide. "Please." The surgeon's masked face turned toward me, his finger raised again. Silence. But I wasn't silent. Not anymore. "I'm getting her out of here," I whispered. The lights flickered twice. The lights flickered twice. "Get to the security office and lock the door." That's what the rules said. But I had already broken the rules, and I was about to break another. I stepped fully into the main operating room. The cold air felt like stepping into a freezer. My breath fogged in front of me. The surgeon stood motionless beside the table, his masked face turned toward me. The girl looked terrified. Her wrists and ankles were strapped down with old, cracking leather restraints. "Let her go," I demanded, flashlight trembling in my hand. The surgeon didn't move, but his eyes, dark voids behind the mask, seemed to bore into me. Then the door slammed shut behind me. "Rule 1, do not enter the main operating room after 1 a.m. I was deep in forbidden territory now. The girl's eyes pleaded with me. "Please, he'll take me like he took the others." I rushed to her side and fumbled with the straps. They were stiff, but came loose with effort. The surgeon still didn't move. For a split second, I thought maybe he couldn't stop me. But as I undid the last restraint, the lights in the room dimmed. A deep rumbling sound filled the air, vibrating the floor beneath my feet. The surgeon's arms lifted, not to stop me, but to point toward the ceiling. I looked up. The ceiling tiles had been pushed aside. Something crawled there. Long, pale arms stretching down, fingers like needles reaching for the girl. The girl screamed. Without thinking, I grabbed her and bolted for the door. It wouldn't budge. The surgeon whispered, his voice like dry paper. Rule 6. I remembered it too late. Never under any circumstance remove any item from the hospital. But the girl wasn't an item. She was a person. This is different, I told myself. I slammed my shoulder into the door. Once, twice. On the third try, it burst open. The cold, stale air of the hallway rushed in. I pulled the girl into the corridor, slamming the door behind us. The surgeon didn't follow, but the scratching sound did. The thing in the ceiling was coming. The girl clung to my side, trembling. Behind us, the ceiling panels crashed to the floor. Something pale and spindly dropped into the hallway. Its limbs bent at impossible angles. Its fingers scraped the tile, leaving deep gouges. The surgeon hadn't followed, but his creation had. "Stay with me!" I shouted. We sprinted down the corridor, my flashlight bouncing wildly. The thing gave chase, its movements jerky but fast, far too fast. The girl's breath came in panicked sobs. "He won't let me leave. No one leaves." "We'll make it," I said, though even I didn't believe it. We reached the stairwell door. I yanked it open and shoved the girl through, slamming it behind us. The thing shrieked, a high, piercing sound that vibrated through the walls. Down the stairs we went. Each step groaned under our weight. "Where are we going?" the girl gasped. "The security office." The office was small, but it had a steel door and a heavy lock. If we could reach it, maybe, just maybe, we could hold out until dawn. As we reached the ground floor landing, the fluorescent lights above flickered. Once, twice, Rule 5 again. If the hallway lights flicker twice, shelter in the security office and lock the door. This time I didn't hesitate. We raced down the last hallway. Behind us, the stairwell door burst open. The thing screeched, claws dragging sparks from the tile. I fumbled the keys from my belt with shaking hands. The security office door loomed ahead. 30 feet. 20. The girl stumbled. I caught her just in time and hauled her forward. 10 feet. The creature was gaining. I shoved the key into the lock, twisted, and flung the door open. The girl slipped inside. I followed and slammed it shut, engaging every bolt and chain. Silence. For a heartbeat. Then bang! The door shook under a heavy blow. Again and again. I held the handle tight, my knuckles white. On the monitors, every camera feed flickered to static. All except one. The main operating room. The surgeon stood alone, but not idle. He pointed toward the security office door, and then he spoke, though no mouth moved. "Rule 6. The pounding at the door continued. Boom, boom, boom. The metal frame groaned but held. For now, the girl clutched my arm, her eyes wide with terror. "He'll never stop." "You broke the final rule. Never under any circumstance remove any item from the hospital." But the girl wasn't an item. She was a person. At least that's what I kept telling myself. The monitors buzzed and flickered. One by one, the static cleared. Each screen now showed the same scene. The hallways, the operating room, the pediatric ward, even the basement morgue. All empty. Except for one thing. The surgeon was in every room. Dozens of him, moving in perfect unison. Their masked faces turned toward the cameras, their fingers raised, pointing directly at me. Rule 6. The pounding at the door stopped. For a moment, I hoped the nightmare was over. Then from the vent above the door, the cold whisper came. Return what you took. The girl shook her head violently. Please, don't send me back. My heart ached. Whatever she was, whatever had happened to her, she was terrified. But the hospital wasn't just haunted. It was alive. It had laws, rules. And now that I had broken them, it wouldn't just punish me. It would punish us both. The lights flickered twice, not just in the hallway, but inside the office. The girl gasped. He's here. From the shadows behind the filing cabinet, a figure emerged. Not the surgeon this time. Mr. Hargrove. But something was wrong. His eyes were hollow, empty sockets. His uniform was old, stained with something dark. You should have followed the rules, Evan, he rasped. I stepped back, pulling the girl with me. Mr. Hargrove? My voice trembled. What's happening? He didn't answer. He simply pointed to the door. Open it, return what you took, or neither of you will see the morning. Mr. Hargrove, or whatever wore his face, stood rigid, finger aimed at the door. Return what you took. The girl whimpered beside me. Please, Evan, don't let him take me. I was trapped between two impossible choices. Obey the rules, or fight the will of the hospital itself. I swallowed hard. She's not an object. She's not a thing. She's human. Mr. Hargrove's hollow eyes seemed to narrow. You broke the 6th rule. That makes her property of Ravenwood now. From the monitors, the surgeon clones remained still, watching, waiting. The pounding resumed, louder, heavier. Cracks formed around the steel door's hinges. Think, Evan. The rules were strict, but they were also old, written by someone trying to control whatever force ruled this place. Maybe there was a loophole. I pulled the girl behind me and faced Mr. Hargrove's specter. What if I offer something else? The figure paused. What if I stay? I said. Let her go. I'll become part of Ravenwood. She walks free. The girl gasped, but I held firm. The pounding stopped. On the monitors, the surgeons lowered their arms, their heads tilted slightly as if considering the offer. The shadow wearing Hargrove's face stepped closer. His breath smelled of earth and rot. An exchange, a long pause. Then he nodded once. You may stay. She may go, if she crosses the threshold alone. My chest tightened. Alone? He nodded again. If you attempt to follow, both will be claimed. I turned to the girl. You have to go. Now. Tears filled her eyes. No, not without you. You have to, I whispered. It's the only way. Slowly, I unlatched the door. The hallway beyond was empty, silent. I pushed it open just wide enough for her to slip through. The girl took one hesitant step into the hallway, looking back at me. The door swung closed behind her. The locks clicked into place, by themselves. The monitors blacked out. Only the operating room feed remained. The surgeon stood alone, waiting. The girl was gone. Safe, if such a thing existed anymore. And I had made my choice. The monitors flickered once more. Every feed showed only one location now. The main operating room. The surgeon stood by the table, arms lowered at his sides, waiting, inviting. Mr. Hargrove's specter remained in the corner of the security office, his hollow eyes watching me. You kept your word. Now fulfill the bargain. The weight of the decision crushed my chest, but there was no turning back. Slowly, I opened the office door and stepped into the dark hallway. The silence felt heavier now, like the entire building was holding its breath. I passed the pediatric ward, the morgue stairwell, all quiet. No whispers, no footsteps. Only the cold, watchful presence of Ravenwood. The main operating room door stood open. The surgeon waited inside. As I crossed the threshold, the old surgical lights flickered to life. The cold was bone deep, but I felt no fear. Not anymore. On the table lay an empty space where the girl had been. The surgeon pointed to it. Lie down. I approached the table, placed my flashlight beside it, and lay back. The straps coiled around my wrists and ankles, not by human hands, but as if the hospital itself accepted my choice. Mr. Hargrove's face appeared above me, his expression solemn. You followed the rules in the end. I nodded once. The surgeon raised a gloved hand and everything went dark. They say Ravenwood Memorial is still abandoned. Locals warn not to get too close at night. But sometimes, when the wind is right and the moon is low, passers-by swear they see lights flickering inside. A figure standing in the window. The new night guard, following the rules.